Hello, Degrassi readers, and welcome back to our library. Today, it's just me, and it's nice to be just me again. Although, how much fun was it to interview Tom Melissis and Jocelyn back to back 2 days in a row of interviewing, honestly, two of my best friends now? Like, wild. So, because those were both unplanned and super fun, I'm going to spend today's episode kind of recapping them, kind of letting you know how those happened and like my point of view of them, as well as discussing some Degrassi book news. Like, I don't know if y'all follow me on Instagram or if y'all follow the Lorimer publishing website the way I do. Probably not. But one of our Degrassi books was recently reprinted. Now, if I had a soundboard, this is where I would go like, "Bow, bow, bow, bow," or like clap emoji noises, like applause. I don't know how to do any of that. So just imagine we're on Discord and that was the soundboard, and because Exit Stage Left, the first ever Degrassi Junior High book, was recently reprinted. And, well, that's the whole point of this podcast, was to get the books reprinted. That was the question I asked Linda Schuyler back in, like, 2023, whenever we did the Mother of All Degrassi book club. It's all a blur in my mind of when that happened. It feels like it could have been yesterday. And now the goal's kind of there, and now I have to find a new goal. Like, now I want them to make new books, or talk about the books in the documentary, or just have fun. So this episode is just recaps of those two interviews from my point of view, as well as kind of answering the question, what does a reprint actually mean? Because I kind of recently found out that the books never stopped being printed. I thought they were out of print this whole time. When I asked Linda Schuyler that question, it's because I thought the books were out of print. And now I know they weren't. But what exactly does it mean? The books have been reprinted before, but not Exit Stage Left, as far as I know. So just like, what does that mean? And we'll get to that. But I got a few questions. People asked, what was it like preparing for an interview with a Degrassi actor? And honestly, that's a question that I had to ask Jocelyn before I even started the interview process with Tom. As soon as he said, well, I'd love to be on your podcast, I was like, oh crap, I didn't think anyone would actually say that to me ever. What does that entail? So Jocelyn said, watch every single scene of Tom on any episode of Degrassi ever. And I said, okay. And she said, if you watch only the Tom scenes, it'll go by quicker. And I thought, well, that's smart. But you want to know what? Some of the scenes of Tom are so short. They're literally just his torso for 10 seconds. He says nothing, and then that's it. And you're like, wait, was that really him? And it was. And, like, some scenes are in episodes that I absolutely love. Like, yeah, sure, I love every episode of Degrassi, sure. But, like, not really. Like, episode right after the reunion in season 1, I don't clamor to watch that. If Tom was in that one, he's not, but if he was, I would not be struggling to watch just his scene and nothing else. I'd be like, okay, yeah, I don't care that much. Like, sure, JT's there, but like, I don't really like JT enough in that episode, or anyone else for that matter. Like, I don't care. It's mean, but it's not a favorite for me. But Tom Melissis is in My Body is a Cage. And, like, you want me to watch just his scenes and nothing else? You're just, like, kidding yourself if you think I'm going to do that. So, for me, that was, like, what took the longest, was trying to convince myself I don't need to watch the rest of the episode. I can literally just watch just Tom. But, like, I also decided to listen to Jocelyn's interview with Tom, as well as Jocelyn's trivia questions with Tom. And then I also decided that not only do I need the audio, but I should also try screen recording the call. And, like, Tom's call was not on Zoom because he doesn't have Zoom, which is fine because I've only ever used Zoom like 3 times before and I don't know how it works at all. And then, like, I had to get a screen recording device. Like, I downloaded software for my laptop to screen record. And then I was like, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. We ended up talking for 2 hours straight. And I was like, oh, I have to, like, screen record it, make sure nothing goes wrong, make sure I know how Instagram calls work, and, like, how do I turn this into a video? How do I edit it? Honestly, that's why Tom's episode took me so long to do. It took me like 3 weeks just to figure out how to download the video after getting it on the software website thing. I had to, like, download a Chrome extension. Honestly, I don't think I ever want to do a non-Zoom call video, like, ever again. And I had Jocelyn's the very next day. So I was nerve-wracked. I was so nervous. And so for Tom, I, like, put him on the back burner as soon as I was done with the call. I was like, okay, not going to think about it again. I have to binge, like, old book club videos from the Mother of All Degrassi, listen to the Snake recordings from the Snake Book Club, and, like, come up with a bunch of questions because nobody else came up with any except for Amber came up with 2. It was really tough. But do I want to do it again? Yes. Yes. Like, I love Jocelyn. I love Tom too. I absolutely love Tom. He and I still message. I was messaging him when I was reading Exit Stage Left because his character Jeff comes up a decent amount. And I was like, look what your Jeff's doing. Look at what he's saying. Like, oh my gosh. And he loved it. Tom and I are, like, true besties. So, honestly, do I have any regrets? Kind of. I regret not doing more research ahead of time on, like, how to edit a video. So, if you are on Patreon, you'll see I didn't edit a single second of it. Everyone's gonna wonder why. Turns out I just did not know how to. Like, there's a little clip of me in the beginning saying, oh, if you want me to edit any of this out, like, just message me, let me know, and I'll do it. That's a total bluff. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted him to feel so comfortable. And I kind of, like, thought I was, like, manifesting learning how to do video editing. Boy, was I wrong. So I downloaded this thing called Clipchamp. I don't know what it is. My laptop had a little button that said edit with Clipchamp. And I was like, okay, that means that's already on here. No, it didn't. I had to go to the Microsoft Store, download it for free, and then realize that every time I opened it, my laptop would crash. I tried to edit this video 4 times. Every time my laptop crashed. So I Googled, why does Clipchamp keep making my laptop crash? And it said, I didn't have the most recent version. And I said, I just downloaded this about 3 days ago. I have the most recent version. Like, there's no way I don't. So truly, I just never, ever learned what was wrong. I uninstalled Clipchamp and I said, Jocelyn, here's the whole unedited version. Here's what happened. And Jocelyn was like, oh, you're fine. Like, you're cool. You tried and I appreciate you trying and you did your best. And that's, like, truly why I love Jocelyn. Like, someone who challenges me to learn new things, but understands that it's not always going to happen. Like, I try and I want to do my best and I want to learn new things, but technology is just hard. It's just hard. Like, I don't know. And then for Spotify people, if you're not on Degrassi Kids Patreon, which is actually most of my audience is probably on there, but you missed that small part. I was able to edit out the first 20 seconds where I explained to him how many questions we had, what the trivia was going to be like, and just like, oh yeah, I can totally edit anything out. And that's also where I said, The trivia is most likely only going to be for Jocelyn's Patreon. Here's why that was wrong, because it ended up being on Spotify. Spotify for podcasters has its own video editing software built into it. Turns out it crashes on 2-hour long videos. Now here's the thing. That's completely understandable. It is. Completely understandable. I totally get it. Most likely no one's ever tried to edit a video that long before. And yeah, they probably shouldn't. So I couldn't even watch the whole 2 hours. I tried about 6 different times, to be honest. And it just kept crashing. And it was making me like really upset. I was crying. I was so mad. I was just like, you know what? Spotify people will get the trivia too. Because I was going to try to cut it out and then just go straight to the end where his wife comes in and says, hey, and meets us. And that's it. And I just never got around to it. I just didn't learn how to do it. I couldn't figure it out. It kept crashing. Technology is just not great. But that's great for y'all because that means y'all got to see me do fun trivia with Tom. Trivia with Tom was really cool. He did pretty good. I think, honestly, Tom Melissis is such a laid back guy. Tons of fun. I want to meet him in person one day. I want to give him a hug. He seems really, really cool. So, honestly, if any of y'all have a podcast or are thinking about starting a podcast and you're nervous about like having friends or celebrities on your podcast, honestly, I never thought I would have a celebrity on my podcast. Other than like, I guess Jocelyn's technically famous because she's on the Canada Walk of Fame. She's going to be in a Degrassi documentary. And so is Evie. So I was like, oh yeah, those are the only famous people that'll be on my podcast. Evie and Jocelyn, and that's it. So I didn't plan for it, but like, I reached the fucking stars. Literally. Because Tom's a star. So like, I don't know, just have fun, but do your research. Don't promise that you can edit things out if you can't. But honestly, Tom didn't care. He never messaged me and said, oh, can you edit this out? Like, no, I think he completely forgot that I said that. So, I think we're all okay. Jocelyn's was the very next day, and it was during a thunderstorm. Like, I know y'all heard that thunder. It was loud. I was so scared the power was gonna go out. So the thunderstorm was actually scheduled for the Tom day, and I was freaked out about it. Our power goes out a lot. My dog gets scared, as y'all could tell. I did not want that happening during the Tom day. That happening during the Jocelyn day was like the best case scenario, honestly, because Jocelyn's chill and is used to seeing me jump out of my skin when my dog barks out of nowhere because she's loud. And like somehow my laptop did noise cancel a decent amount of that, but it was loud and it was distracting and honestly created a lot of good comical moments that I decided to leave in. So Jocelyn's was on Zoom, and thankfully Zoom does save the audio versions, but saves it on something called WAV. I don't know what that means. So I had to transfer the WAV into MP4 to put it onto Audacity to edit it. So that was interesting. And I had never done a Zoom call before that I like had to record and everything. So I had to do 3 separate ones in a row with Jocelyn because I have the free version and it only records for like 30 minutes at a time. And I made trivia for Jocelyn that was only on Patreon this time. That was super fun for me. I stumped Jocelyn on one of the questions. That was super exciting. I was like, oh my gosh, I stumped the Degrassi kid. I did it. That was so cool. And honestly, we just had tons of fun. I learned a lot about Jocelyn, as well as like a little bit about like what the thinking process is when you decide to shoot for the stars, as Jocelyn often does. Because for me, that's not my thinking process. I am hope breeds eternal misery. And like what I mean by that is just like I wasn't raised to be hopeful. Nobody in my life is really a hopeful person. other than Jocelyn, really. Like, my family, we don't have hopes and dreams, really. It's not our deal. Like, no, that's not our deal at all. Like, no. We don't think highly of ourselves very often. We don't dream big. We kind of like sit down and don't express our feelings. And that's how I was raised. So hearing someone be like, oh yeah, I had a dream, I shot for the stars, and I made it and I did it. And I'm like, I don't comprehend. So Jocelyn is someone who like gives me that hope and positivity. Talking to them for like 2 hours straight, honestly, was so cool. To just spend that time with just me and my friend and have that one-on-one time was really, really cool. To talk about book club, obviously, was the best. So I loved that as well. And I watched two of our previous Mother of All Degrassi book club videos on Patreon. And then I listened to three of our Degrassi book club snake recordings on Patreon. And then I just like came up with questions based on those things. And that was about it. It wasn't hard for me on that one. It wasn't nerve wracking. Honestly, it was so chill. I would love to do another one of those with someone else or with Jocelyn again. So, yeah, that's basically my recap. I wanted to keep this part kind of short because the reprint script is 4 pages long. We're just going to jump into it, really. So I found out about the reprint when Degrassi Kid messaged me and said, hey, what do you think about Exit Stage Left? And I just said, well, it's not great. Let me double check and see when it was published, because that will confirm some of my emotions. So I went to the website to check when it was published, and I saw reprinting in progress. And I then stopped caring about the rest and just was really excited because I know what happened when the Spike book was reprinted. They took out a paragraph and put a different one in, and they changed the cover art, they changed the back, they changed a lot. I found this out from a podcast called Degrassi AV Club. They did an episode on the Spike book, and in that episode, one co-host had the original and one co-host had the new one. And they talked a little bit about the differences in between the original and the reprints. If you are interested in that, I will leave the episode linked in the description on the Spotify version, as well as like Amazon Music version. And you can check that out. I highly recommend them. They have done episodes on all of the Degrassi Junior High books, including Exit Stage Left. They do like little book reviews and they get drunk while they do them. They're very fun and interesting, but they're not as in depth as my podcast. So we're very different, but still both pretty good in my opinion. Anyway, this is editing me, so back to recording me. And that made me curious what all can change in a reprint and what could happen to Exit Stage Left. And while I don't want to talk about Exit Stage Left too much because I know a lot of my audience hasn't read all the books, that's the point of this podcast. A lot of people haven't read them. So I don't want to spoil anything. I kind of, like everyone, want people to read along, you know? So there is going to be a link to an archive.org scanned copy. I did not scan this copy, but because I don't know how to put them online when I do. So you're welcome to read it, or there will also be a link in the description to the Lorimer website, and you can buy a copy there. That will be the copy of the reprint, though, not a copy of the original. And like I'm about to tell you in my 4 pages of notes, I don't know what the differences will be just yet. I have bought myself a copy. It is on the way, but I might not have needed to. So, anyway, let's start with my notes. So, what can change is the same whether you consider Exit Stage Left to be a normal book or like an episode novelization. For those of you who don't know much about this book, I'll share some light knowledge because I still intend to go in order. It won't be a bunch, but just like a taste. So it was written by William Pasnak and was published on January 1st, 1987, while the first episode of Degrassi Junior High premiered on January 18th, 1987. So, according to my Googling skills, publishing now takes anywhere from 9 months to 2 years. So it's hard to say what that means for the 80s, but this does mean he would have had to go over any material that he was given about Degrassi Junior High, which is completely different from Kids of Degrassi Street, and write and publish a book before the episodes even premiered. So any script changes that may have been made before the filming process actually started, he wouldn't have received. And for us hardcore Degrassi fans, we know that the scripts are kind of changeable sometimes. They do a table read by flipping over, and the actors read the script for the very first time right there at the table read. And they can react and say, no, my character wouldn't do this. Or, yes, my character would. Or, and things can change when a child says, my character wouldn't do this. Linda took the actors very seriously and cared what they said about what their characters would and wouldn't do, or what kids wouldn't do in general. So that means that William Pasnak, who was never involved with Degrassi before this or after this, wouldn't have known these things had changed. To me, this makes a big difference. It's a big deal. I still really enjoy Exit Stage Left, and I don't want anyone to automatically be like against it, but it's not canon. And that's not just coming from me. That's coming from Degrassi Wiki as well. I don't know who's in charge of Degrassi Wiki, but I trust them. They update it pretty regularly, it seems like. So, anyway, so if it now takes 9 months to 2 years to write and publish a book, how long it took in the 80s is really hard to say. And he probably didn't have much interaction with everyone in the Degrassi area, like the writers and the actors, because this is all a year after Griff Gets a Hand premiered on January 5th, 1986. And that's the very last episode of Kids of Degrassi Street. So that gives them like a year to write a book and publish it and write like a whole season's worth of Degrassi episodes and film them. And like that's making whole new characters, that's moving from on locations and things like that. It's hard to believe that the same amount of care went into Exit Stage Left as with other books. So that's basically like the short end of what I have to say about it for now. I don't know how much information that gives you, but hopefully that's enough to let you know why I want so many things to change. So I feel like it's safe to say no one connected with Degrassi was really overseeing it, is what I'm trying to say. And it shows. So while it's meant to be a book version of a Degrassi, I would honestly say half season, with a play and Elodie's dad kind of coming back from the hospital and trying to go on a trip, while also being the first week back after Christmas break. It actually feels like more than a week, but they say it's a week. It doesn't match any of the episodes. So it's unclear what it's supposed to be, to me anyway. That doesn't make a difference in what can change with a reprint, but it changes the why things would be changed. Why would they make the change, really? In episode novelization reprints, changes are made for a few reasons. First, you might add supplementary materials, or market better to the target audience, which may have changed since the first printing of the book. You might also incorporate viewer feedback, which would be viewers of the show, not the book. Or you might update for continuity. Storylines may have changed, kind of like they changed with Degrassi, I'm sure. Or, fifth, you might try to provide a more comprehensive adaptation that can feel enriching to dedicated fans, which is something I would enjoy. So, while changes in the reprinting of a normal book happen, to kind of do a few other things, like fix misspellings and misprints, which still need to happen here, or reflect the new time period as well as the current publishing conventions, which could also still happen here. Or number three, they might add collectible variants. So that's things like spreages, sprayed edges, if anyone doesn't know, or like multiple kinds of covers. Sometimes people like certain cover art. And number four, they might add additional content such as an author's note or a publisher's note / introduction. Sadly, there's always a chance nothing will change, and I feel like that could be likely for Exit Stage Left, but maybe this time I don't err on the side of hope breeds eternal misery, and this time I might hope for some changes, you know? So let's do the hoping that something will change and ask the question, what can change? Well, number one, typos can be fixed. And I'll give some small examples of those typos that I would like to see changed. Like, first of all, Caitlin's name is spelled wrong multiple times throughout the book. They spell it Caitlyn, and the Y should be an I. According to the cover of her own character book, those instances happen on page 34, page 52, and page 184. I guess that's not a big deal, but it would be nice to see the care put into that, in my opinion. And then there's a small typo on page 178 where it says wired instead of worried. That's just an instance where obviously we know what makes sense. My brain auto-corrected it quite a few times, but it shouldn't have. And then on page 186, it does say high jive instead of high five. Again, not a big deal, but if we're going to reprint something, we should put the heart into it. It's Degrassi. So, number two, changes that can happen. Updates can be made for continuity, such as Lucy's last name should be changed. This book has her last name as Baines, Baines. This is on pages 48 and 150. But in the show, her last name is Fernandez, as well as updating the slang throughout the book, such as, in Degrassi, people are constantly called a broomhead. And while I first thought that was a way of saying their head had nothing but dust from the bottom of a broom inside of it, just meaning they were like empty-headed, airheaded, stupid kind of a deal. Actually, it just came from a phone book, so it isn't interchangeable with another thing, like in this book where they also use the terms sockhead on page 36 and baghead on page 185. Other updates that I would make for character details are due to on page 88, in which Lucy has to explain to Heather that people of color can have white moms and dads of color, or just like one white parent and one parent of color. Doesn't really matter which gender the parent has. While Heather accepts the explanation quickly, to me it felt out of character and unnecessary to the audience reading the book. As well as on page 165, where Snake's mom is described as, air quotes, having moods. His exact words are, my mom sometimes, she has moods. She doesn't mean anything by it, but you have to keep your head down. He goes silent for a moment, then says, sometimes she gets sort of violent, yells, maybe throws things. She takes pills for it. Most of the time, she's okay, but you never know. That's why I never asked anyone over. But none of that gets brought up in the show or again in the book after that. So that really feels out of character for Snake's mom, which I know we don't see her often on the show, but in Snake's character book, she didn't seem to have moods that got violent or yell or anything like that. She seemed really passive aggressive and like she preferred to let his dad take over the show. Just my personal opinion, but it's my podcast, so it's my opinion, I guess. And there's three more things I would like changed, so I'll go over those. So the front cover could also change. Since this is an audio medium, I can't show it to you. But if you click on the archive.org link to read the book, the cover will be there. There is another version of the cover that is similar, but says a Degrassi book instead of Degrassi Junior High on it. And it has the same picture, but on a background that looks like a piece of paper, kind of like the character book's first printings. So I would change this to a cover that fits the book better. The picture currently is Arthur, Rick, Wheels, Joey, Caitlin, Yick, Susie, and Stephanie in front of the school doing silly faces. The picture itself is tons of fun and could be cool if you wanted to include it as a bonus along with a few others for supplementary materials that can be used to expand the novelization/universe. And I'll touch on that again in a minute as number 5 on the list of things I would like changed. But I would change the cover to something that fits the book. For example, maybe a poster or ticket to the play. Something that tells people the name of the play, or that you could try maybe an illustration of a scene from the play, such as one of the ghosts or LD. She's a huge part of this book. It's the only book that this character's a part of, and yet they're not on the cover at all. I feel like LD gets kind of the short end of the stick. We don't get to see LD graduate or have a whole lot of really fun backgrounds. We don't see a lot of LD anything in the fandom, really. So it would be nice to see LD on the cover somewhere. Maybe a drawing of our characters on stage taking a bow could be really cool as well. I know these changes would require hiring an artist and therefore are highly unlikely, but the other Degrassi books that were reprinted in 2007 did get new covers. So it could still happen, and this could be seen as me saying my dreams and not what I think is likely to happen, since the picture on the website hasn't changed. Truly, this is just a fun episode for me to do. I've always wanted to learn what could happen in a reprint, and now I'm fantasizing about what could happen, and you're listening to it. So, number 4, the back of the cover could change. Mainly the description of the book, because that's mostly what the back of a cover is. The description says, "How could one simple school play turn Degrassi Junior High upside down and inside out? Stephanie K, president of the student body, is sure she is going to be the star. Joey Jeremiah, class clown, thinks that if he gets a part in the play, Stephanie will finally notice him. LD has more important things on her mind than the play. No one is prepared for what happens next, and Degrassi Junior High will never be the same." Based on the popular TV series Degrassi Junior High. So, technically, there's not really much wrong with this, but Degrassi Junior High will be the same again, because nothing in this book affects the show. Nothing in this book happens in the show. This book changes nothing. Sadly, it does nothing. So while the back of the cover is intriguing to the audience, I'm sure, I was excited when I first read this book, and when I first read the back cover, I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome, but I don't remember any school plays ever happening in Degrassi Junior High. And I still don't remember any school plays happening in Degrassi Junior High. So nothing happens in the show from this book. I feel like something that actually explains it, like, this is a non-canonical book based on previous scripts from the show, if that's what it's actually based on. Like, it something that actually tells you the truth. Something for us hardcore fans that are like actually curious why this book exists. Because I feel like the book existed to drum up attention for the show, but it ends up just being a mystery of like what were the first scripts actually entailing? Was this supposed to be like a second half to the first season? Kind of what it feels like, because Rick is living with his brother. LD's dad already went to the hospital, and LD is still worried about it. Jeff is in the book, and he's not introduced like a brand new character. He's talked about like we actually know him. So it makes me curious what all William Pasnak actually got. What were the scripts that he saw, and why is this what he envisioned for this second half of the show? And were these episodes supposed to be filmed at some point? And why weren't they? Were they never supposed to be filmed? Was this supposed to be like in between seasons 1 and 2 to keep the audience engaged with the show in between? That feels like something Degrassi would do. So I want a back cover that tells me these things. You know? Something that tells me the answers to these questions that I'm just shouting into the ether. Ether? I don't know the word. Like, Stephanie K is the president of the student body, yes. But if you read this book before you watched any of the show, you'd be completely confused. And even if you watched it after and then tuned into season 2, you'd be completely confused. I know I reread this and watched the first 3 episodes of season 2 of Degrassi Junior High and was completely confused. It didn't make any sense. LD ends up with a crush on Snake in this book, but she doesn't have a crush on Snake in season 2. LD still seems like a lesbian to me. So what's up with that? It just doesn't make any sense. So I think a back cover, a description of the book that makes it make sense would be, well, perfect. So, and the play isn't simple either, to be honest. I don't know. I want more. I want justice for Exit Stage Left. So, number 5, this is the last one. New info could be added, such as behind the scenes pictures. That's kind of where number 3 came in, where I wanted a new cover, but still like this picture and think that people would like seeing it. Or maybe an introduction written by the publisher, or the author could also write an introduction, but he is 75 and hasn't done any other Degrassi work, so he might not know what to say, or like might not really have time. I wouldn't want to bother him too much. I'd be intrigued to know how much Mr. Pasnak was given before writing this, or like how he was chosen for this, because he has no other involvement with Degrassi. So how did he get in contact with James Lorimer or Linda or whoever signed him up for this? I'm curious about it. I'm curious what he knew of Degrassi before this. Like, had he seen Kids of Degrassi Street? Had he heard of it, like, through the grapevine? And just, like, how much time was he given? Because, like I ran down earlier, it takes 9 months to 2 years to publish a book. And I don't feel like he was given the 2 years. But I could be wrong. And I want to know who he met with. I am so curious about this book because it's peculiar. It's different. None of the other Degrassi Junior High, Degrassi High era books involve so many characters or deal with issues that aren't seen in the show, really. There's no plays in the show. LD's dad doesn't go on a trip or anything like that in the show. There's a song in here by Zit Remedy that we never hear in the show. It's very interesting. I would love to have heard it played aloud, but, you know. So I'm curious, and I feel like that could be something answered in an introduction. And I just want to end this with, please know, this is literally just what I would like to see. In past reprints, we have seen changes to cover art, descriptions, and textual changes, such as some things added and some things taken away. So while it's all up in the air for now, I'll touch back on these thoughts during my actual episode for Exit Stage Left, since the reprint has already happened and is already available for sale. My hopes won't make any difference, and this is truly just for fun. This is kind of just something I was curious about and something I wanted to put up into the air. If you have read Exit Stage Left before and you have thoughts of what you'd like to see changed, message me, please, just so we can talk. I just want someone to talk to about it. Let me know your thoughts, let me know your hopes, and I promise next time I will be back in order. Hopefully. I actually cannot make a promise because I never thought the last two episodes would happen, and they did, obviously. So, I don't know. But you know where to reach me off at, I'm sure. I am available to talk if you want to talk. I don't know how to end these, and I never do. Um, I love y'all. Bye. I hope y'all have a great day. See you next time. Bye.